down button. There we go. Okay. We're on to our next session. So everybody who knows they're involved in this session, and there's 6 of you, please start walking this direction because I'm going to be introducing you. So come quickly and take a seat, actually. Just step on up there. Go for it. Scaling and sustaining climate resilience, a cross-sector approach. We're going to have a wonderful discussion with this esteemed panel on this topic. We're going to bring together a diverse array of stakeholders to examine how community power can be sustained by focusing on local climate resilience efforts and how each of us can invest more intentionally in local efforts. All right, and so I'm going to just quickly, wait, we've got one person missing. It's Violet. She's coming. She's coming. All right. Just quickly, I'll just share. Jennifer Fearing, President, I think I can go forward one more. There we go, there they are all. President of Fearless Advocacy and Sacramento Advocate for Cal Nonprofits. Next to her, Jack Mahoney, two down. Senior Director of Community Action at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Coming back, we have Jake Ziegelman, the Vice President of the Bay Area region with PG&E. Welcome. And Jasneet, nice to see you again. Welcome back to San Mateo County. We love having you here. Jasneet Sharma, Director of the Sustainability Department with the County of San Mateo. And Violet is making her way here. Violet Siena, Founder and Executive Director of Climate Resilient Communities. And she's coming. There she is. Violet, I just introduced you, so you're coming in on the red carpet here. Okay, and to moderate this panel, we welcome back Dr. Chris Fields. And for the sake of the live stream, I'll share the Perry L. McCarty, Director of the Stanford Woods Institute for the Environment and the Melvin and Joan Lane Professor for Interdisciplinary Environmental Studies at the Stanford Doerr School of Sustainability. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Ash, for getting us started. I'm excited that this is an opportunity to really unfold a lot of the themes that you've already heard about, themes of integrating different levels of government with community-based organizations and philanthropy, themes of deepening relationships so that people have sufficient trust to strive out on bold new activities and to open new kinds of conversations. We have a wonderful panel that's set to address this, and a substantial amount of time to really dig into some key issues. The basic idea is that I'll start off with a few questions for the panelists. It may turn into a little bit of free-flowing as we move through, and then the last 15 minutes or so of the time, we'll turn it over to questions from all of you. And I'm going to sort of go from the larger levels of organization to the smaller ones, start out with a question for Jennifer to help us think through how policy gets formulated. And the question I want to start out with is that we've already talked about progress moving at the speed of trust, and the speed of trust is often a lot slower than the speed of the legislative process. And how do you think about reconciling these contrasting timelines and the need for, let's say, harmonization?
Well, thank you for that question, and thanks for letting me interlope from Sacramento. I want to assure you that I took 2 trains and a bus to get here. Individual agency. It's tricky. Even for those of us, I've been lobbying in Sacramento for nonprofits for over 20 years, and I actually find that the legislative process is getting even harder for those of us who are full-time in Sacramento and professionally engaged. There are processes that are more opaque and move faster, and big consequential things sort of roll out and have almost no opportunity for engagement, and it's really challenging and frankly disheartening for those of us that do work. I work for environmental justice organizations that are super accountable, like you all are, to your residents and to your communities. And it's quite frustrating and challenging. What I will say is the advice that I give to all of my clients, it's going to be hard to change Sacramento, but we vote every few years, and we have the opportunity to be directly engaged with particularly your state electeds, but often those people rise, as we heard Assemblywoman Pappen, rise from local government leadership. So early, often regular, routine relationship building and engagement with all of your electeds, knowing they're making consequential decisions fairly quickly, and trying to situate yourself as their go-to resource. They are dealing with thousands of issues and moving quick, and they need proxies. Like, they need people they trust who can tell them quickly, yes on this, no on that, I like this, I don't like that. And they're gonna trust you and look to you for those if you've built kind of deep relationships. So specific ideas about how to do that, rather than giving you that general vague idea. They're here on Fridays. They're always back in their district on Fridays. You can meet directly with them. They have full-time district representative staff who to build a relationship with. They're also here during the recesses, so now-ish through the end of the year is a good time. I also encourage every nonprofit to ask their local electeds, pick one every board meeting and ask them to come to your board meeting and share with them an update. It forces them to actually prepare to think about what you care about and bring a kind of an update to you. And then that's an opportunity for you to, again, build that relationship, but also share with them where your priorities are. And then lastly, I would encourage you from a capacity standpoint, it's really valuable to join state associations that do policy and advocacy work and be active in those and responsive, like when they send action alerts out and ask you to engage, to prioritize doing that. That for those of you that feel really challenged to add your own direct engagement to that, though you can work through state associations and help influence what they care about and what their priorities are, and also get a lot of good information on timing and the kind of urgent needs to engage.
Those concrete suggestions, super helpful. Let me ask more or less the same question from the perspective of how a philanthropy thinks about it. And Jack, when you think about how you fund and how you accomplish long-term objectives with short-term projects, what are the keys?
I think the biggest thing, for us that we've learned over time, right? I mean, we've made a couple mistakes in this process. And the first thing was starting with highly restricted grant funding. Many of you know, right, as you lead your organizations, as you work to fund organizations that are doing the critical work on the ground, the extent to which you can introduce flexibility into grant funding enables nonprofits to really leverage that funding and go out and get bigger grants that are restricted or might have conditions on it that prevent them from being paid, until the work is completed. I think last year it was transitioned all of our environment funding to be general operating support, and I'm just now in the process of connecting with those organizations, and every single one to a T is telling me incredible stories about how they were able to take our investment, which was not huge, in most cases $20,000 to $30,000, but leverage it for hundreds of thousands of dollars in public sector funding, and help them do the things like pay the rent, pay the office salaries, and keep their organizations running. So I think for the funders in the room, that's the most obvious tip I can come up with. I'm amazed that I even had to write it down here in my notes, but would encourage people to start there. For the nonprofits in the room, I think what is really helpful for us is seeing a really clear vision. People in philanthropy, are trying to make sense of different work in different spaces. Many, like myself, are covering different issue areas. I don't work just on climate or the environment, although there are many days in which I wish I did. Many days in which I wish I do not do any time in this space. But I generally love it because I get to meet such interesting people that are thinking about the challenges in many different ways. One concrete suggestion is to develop a strategic plan and to have it be through a really robust community engagement process. Many organizations in this room have done that, have taken the time to set aside their budget and their staff time, to do that right. One of them sitting right, over there, Climate Resilient Communities, developed a strategic plan that can help me as a funder, really understand what they're trying to achieve, what their goal is. And then the third and final thing I think that foundations and nonprofits can do together is think about ways to grow the pot, right? You know, we have an immense challenge in front of us as a community. Assemblymember Poppin talked about, you know, the specific vulnerabilities in San Mateo County. I've seen estimates that it will cost $110 billion just to address the shoreline adaptation issue in the Bay Area, right? If you add up the annual grant making of the 5 largest foundations in the Bay Area, of which Silicon Valley Community Foundation is one, it's only $2.5 billion. Even if you could get all of those foundations to focus right here at home, which trust me, I wish that they would, and to focus just on this issue, right, we wouldn't even really be making a dent in the problem. The answer lies in investing in advocacy, investing in community engagement and power to grow the pot, get more and deeper investments from the public sector, from corporations, from property owners, from everyone here in this community to address the challenges that are in front of us. There's a template for how to do it. Save the Bay in 2016 passed Measure AA that's invested now, I think it's $500 million, right, into wetlands restoration. In Marin County and in Santa Cruz County, they've passed parcel tax measures that have created climate resilience funding that didn't exist before. So I think it's possible, but I think if you can take all those 3 things, you know, as a funder, have general flexible funding, as a nonprofit organization, you can develop a clear vision, and then together we can grow the pot and we can get more people at this table to address the challenge in front of us. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great, thanks. Violet, Jack already set the stage by saying what he wants you to do as a community-based organization. And my understanding is that you're dealing continuously with a whole stream of urgent needs and also this long-term priority on strategic planning and addressing challenges. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the way you balance the pressure between urgent needs and long-term planning.
Thank you very much. You know, from a perspective of a community-based organization that works directly with residents and communities, I think it has been our priority is to fund or seek funding so that we can provide tangible, adaptation, you know, projects or implement what are the priorities to the community. So we've focused a lot about getting funding to provide air purifiers to our families who are living in homes that the air quality is really bad. Many of our communities that we serve have high percent of asthma attacks here in San Mateo County. And so a lot of our funding and a lot of our priorities is getting those support to our communities. And you know, when we lost funding earlier this year from the federal government, immediately I realized as an executive director that my own organization is under attack. Like we were never able to build reserves. Because if a homeowner comes to us crying for to help her to save her her home insurance because AAA is telling them she needs to upgrade her roof, and if she doesn't, she's going to lose 30 years of plus of her paying this insurance company. Immediately I would prioritize her, right? We put out $25,000 new roof so that she can keep her house insurance. We have had projects and families where, one family came to us, the whole part of the house collapsed. We had to prioritize. That's our priority as a community-based organization. That's where our resources go to. The funding we lost from the federal government, we were supposed to buy 400 air purifiers for 400 families, and that disappeared overnight. So we continue to prioritize our communities. It's very tough these days because there's not a lot of funding. I mean, for federal government grants that we depended on, they're great because we're able to provide those direct services. However, there's also a barrier to us as a nonprofit because we have to invoice. We have to do the work first and get paid. And we don't have funding to do that. So if we don't have money to do the work and then get paid later, we would never be able to move anything on the ground to build this resiliency that we always talk about. So back to your question, we still struggle trying to balance. We just completed our first ever strategic plan for CRC. It was an amazing opportunity for us, and we worked with a great group, Panorama Strategy. I was able to see what I needed to do to get CRC to a place where we can continue to survive the challenges and the climate that we are in today, but also continue to serve our communities. So I'm very proud that we still do that, and I'm very grateful. I know many of my funders that are in this room, I'm very grateful to you all for stepping up, because that's what nonprofits needs. But, as a nonprofit, we will continue to fundraise and continue to seek funding, and that's why partnerships, it's very important to us. Coming together, even like our other partnership with other small nonprofits or other partners that we have, we work together to apply for grants together. That's one strategy that we were able to do to continue not only CRC's work, but also Rise Up City's work. We're serving different communities, and we're able to do that in partnership. So that's one of the things that we work at it every day.
But Violet, would you say it's fair to conclude that changes in the federal funding availability has forced you to operate on a more compressed timeline than you would ideally like?
Can you?
I mean,
sorry.
are you putting more emphasis on immediate needs than in the past?
Well, I just came back last night from DC, and I went to Ro Khanna's office, Kevin Mullen's office, Badia's office, even had the chance to sit down with Mullen Schiff's office. It doesn't look like anything is happening at the federal right now. Or they say
I'm
what they
surprised they
can
let you
do.
in if that doesn't.
They're only writing letters. They said, let them know if we haven't received our grants. I'm grateful to Senator Kevin Mullen. A couple of months ago, he advocated for us during one of the committee hearings in DC, but nothing is happening up there. I'm more hopeful for what's here, our county, our city, and maybe our state, for our communities.
Jennifer, did you want to jump in on that? Yeah.
On funding from Sacramento. I don't want to.
No, go ahead and jump in with that.
If this
Sure.
is the right time to do that, but so I was part of a fantastically diverse effort to bring the Climate Bond Now coalition together. And raise your hand if you helped advocate for passage of Prop 4. Thank you, and thanks to California voters who robustly decided to invest $10 billion in a climate bond, the first of its kind. And the first set of those dollars were just appropriated in a bill, and I've never used Whova before, but I did attempt to drop a ton of links into this section of the app to share this out. But there have traditionally been, and frankly still are, limited dollars for climate resilience coming from the state. So much competition, so much oversubscription of really valid applications. Historically, this has come from Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund dollars, but none of that's ever been continuously appropriated. It's always been like a year in, year out thing. But Prop 4 had a couple of buckets that I think are valuable and relevant for the work you're doing. There was $450 million out of the $10 billion that I'd say went directly to climate resilience programming like the transformative climate communities, the community resilience centers, urban greening, the extreme heat programs. And in this year's budget, more than $200 million of those dollars were already appropriated. And I popped on to the websites for those agencies. They were ready to go when that budget got approved. And there are draft, grant guidelines out for comment now. Depending on the program, they are up and running, and it is time to start really pulling applications and your planning together. I'll also say I'm so glad that you mentioned the challenge of advance pay. Or the lack of advance pay and the reimbursement model of the state. We passed a bill a couple years ago, AB 590, that made it permissive for every state grant to a nonprofit to provide up to 25% advance pay and included that same provision in the bond, as well as an indirect cost recovery. The process is in the bond to try to address the equity issues in a lot of this state funding and make it more possible for smaller organizations that don't have the ability to draw consumer loans to float debt to the state while they try to stand up a program. So we are going to continue to push for those to get utilized. It's a permissive structure, but the more we all speak up about the need for that, and if there are local government folks here, if you are the ones that end up drawing those dollars down, you should turn around and provide those advance pay provisions to your grantees. That should not just be something you're able to, utilize through the state, but that you turn around and pay it forward to your grantees. But I won't go on and on, but I did share a number of websites as well as the language of the bills that include these appropriations, and I'm happy to chat more about it. But for your local plans, including like a variety of projects, like the competition is fierce. So the more regional these are, the more the projects are tied into a plan and a longer term vision rather than kind of one-offs. And taking advantage of the technical assistance that the state provides. One of the things the bond did is provide specific dollars that for every program allow technical assistance to help organizations prepare good applications, or regions and collaboratives prepare good applications.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everybody who advocated for making this possible. A lot of what we've talked about so far, JASNeed, has really been about coordination and partnerships, and there are organizations operating all the way from the neighborhood to the state or the nation that need coordination. And how do you think about supporting that coordination and making it as effective as possible?
Thank you for that question. And I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. To hi to everyone once again, and please do stop by and take a chance to meet me again. I'm still making my way around, starting to meet everyone, so looking forward to it. I think the county plays a kind of a unique role in this space. We can, I often like to explain or put the county forward as, we can influence, we can facilitate, but we can also broker partnerships. We can really bring people together. And actually, one of my colleagues put this very rightly, and it's stuck in my head. Our size is just right. We're like the Goldilocks in this story. We're not large enough, or we're small enough that we can understand what's happening on the ground, and yet we're large enough where we have this kind of economy of scale, and we're also connected at the regional and the state level. So I think that's the benefit that we get. So speaking specifically to what Jennifer just said, Prop 4. Absolutely. At a county-wide scale, we have to get ready for this. And if that means, creating some mechanism where we're popping in our ideas of, hey, this is the type of thing I'm considering, that's when the matchmaking has to start. We cannot have multiple applications going across for funding from the county itself. I'm just going to be very upfront there. If we want to bring in the maximum amount of dollars into San Mateo County, we've got to make sure whatever program it is, we're putting one project forward, which is going to impact the most people and the most organizations. Everyone's not going to get everything that they're looking for, but that's probably a good thing, because that's when you know you've seen success. When no one's happy, but everyone's there, that's really that place, that right temperature that you're trying to get. So we'd love to think through how we as a county can support that. We already have a group with all of our cities. It's called RICAPS, the Regional Integrated Climate Action Planning Group, where we coordinate with the cities already on some of that. This group exists here for the nonprofits and the CBOs. I think it's more a case of how do we bring those two together as these projects are being scoped. My learning has been that if you are waiting until the notice of funding opportunity comes out to think of a project, you're too late by then. You've missed the boat. Your idea needs to be baked in way before that. Your partnerships need to be finalized before that, because when that opportunity comes out, you're just going to have to write the scope of work and get things going. So now is the time. And I think I was at another conference where they said, this is it, these next 3 months. It's the most critical stretch for us to get our things in order and well. So I think that's one thing I'm going to say, is that we would really love to help support bringing in funding into San Mateo County, and all of that funding doesn't have to go to the county. We do not see ourselves leading on all of this work or the need for us to lead. Our job is to build the capacity of the community and build the capacity of the community-based organizations to do this. I know sometimes it's easier for the funding to be routed through the county because we have the infrastructure. And yes, Jennifer, to your point, I had another funding we got through state where we had to work through the internal processes to make sure we could give up to 25% of advance payments to get the process started, because while it's absolutely right, the funding's not there, and for us to ask them to do work on a reimbursement basis is just not sustainable. So again, please be thinking today on what structure can we establish for us to get ready to apply for some of this funding. So maybe that's one example I'll put
That's
forward
terrific.
on how we can help
Thank
coordinate
you.
things.
I have two notices. The first is to all the panelists, if you could please speak slowly so that the translation works. And the second is for all of you, and I guess we're going to do the Q&A through the WOVA app. Is that correct? So what you need to do if you want to ask a question is enter it in the app, and we will get to as many as we can. Jake, the PG&E is an important part of all the communities in the county, an important part of the state, but a huge actor in the construction of resilient households and resilient towns. How do you think about the role of PG&E in building resilience, especially among the most vulnerable?
Thanks, Chris, and morning, everyone. We could take this in any number of different directions. I think I'll focus on two areas that happen to be top of mind right now, but also some of the meatiest challenges that we're tackling and really require the collective effort of all of us in this room. So the first is, it's been mentioned already a couple times, the first is wildfire risk mitigation. Clearly, over the last several years, we have been on a progressive mission to reduce the wildfire risk, deploying various layers of protection to significantly reduce the risk of a catastrophic wildfire being sparked by any sort of interaction with the electric grid. Not just because of the direct impacts of a wildfire, which clearly can be awful and catastrophic from an ecological perspective, from an environmental impact perspective, loss of carbon capture, those things, but also all of those downstream ripple effects, loss of housing, displacement, long-term health effects. Violet mentioned, asthma in San Mateo County, air quality, water quality impacts, just the economic burden and hardship of rebuilding, use of raw materials, all of those things add up and tend to disproportionately impact the most disadvantaged and underserved communities. So that is really critical work that we've been undertaking over the last several years. We've made a tremendous amount of progress there, and certainly will be a priority to continue for the foreseeable future in terms of climate resilience. The second piece, the second topic that I'll touch on is how we're really starting to think about tackling and grappling with both the challenge and the opportunity of electric load growth like we haven't seen in decades. So we are now forecasting a doubling of electric load or electric volume between now and 2040. That is dramatically increased just in the last 18 months to 2 years. But what's really important within that is the peak demand. So we can double electric volume, but what does that mean for the peak demand? So stepping back, the way that the electric grid across this country is planned, designed, built, is all to that peak demand. And so how can we manage through that volume, that electric load volume growth, while still managing that peak demand? So that's top of mind right now. The really fascinating point is that we're at this inflection point where we know that this electric load growth is upon us. It means that the grid requires billions of dollars of investment to be climate resilient, to be fit for purpose, to be dealing with this and meeting the demands of this load growth. But at the same time, on an average year, electric grid utilization in the state of California, and this isn't that abnormal, is only 45 to 50%. And so how do we increase that throughput on our existing grid assets to then allow us to be really thoughtful, strategic, targeted in deploying the dollars that are needed to invest back in the grid in the right places? How are we siting projects, all of this load growth, data centers, EV charging depots, all of these kind of large load projects? How are we siting them or helping our customers site them in the right places where the grid actually has some capacity or might only require modest grid upgrades to make that capacity happen? And the reason this is important for our communities is because that has this downstream kind of ripple effect that allows us to spend less money. It makes all of our power more affordable and accessible. Certainly important for our disadvantaged communities. It allows us to use less raw materials in the build out of that new grid. It allows us to potentially offset the need for new fossil fuel fired generation. So if we can be smart about where we're siting these projects, if we can do a better job of tapping into the proliferation of distributed energy resources that are growing and growing like weeds by the day, if we can harness that distributed energy better, site projects in the right places, smooth out that electric load consumption both geographically and temporally over the day and over the year, that it just can provide massive benefits in terms of how we're thinking about it for our communities, in terms of climate resiliency, sustainability, all good things. But again, the reason I'm raising it here is because these are issues that will take the collective effort of private sector, public sector, academia, our legislators, our regulators, all working together in concert to get this right.
Jake, I wonder if you could just follow up with a couple of comments on what are the opportunities in communities to help assist with this challenge of leveling out demand and making the peak delivery not so much of a challenge?
Yeah, I think the main thing that springs to my mind is that electrification is on us. Everyone is talking about electrification. Very, very important. Electrification tends to be most accessible to customers and companies that have the resources to do it. The electrification technologies are certainly coming down in cost. They're coming down the standard technology cost curve. But our most disadvantaged and underserved communities are going to be the ones who are left behind in that electrification journey if they don't get some help from everyone in this room. And the double whammy of that is that as the utility, we're always the provider of last resort for both electricity and gas. And so what happens as we electrify, the gas system is still there, and so now we are as PG&E managing and investing in a gas system that is serving fewer and fewer customers who also happen to be the most underserved, right? And so we have this kind of downward rate spiral where we are managing a more and more expensive system for a dwindling population of customers who can afford it the least. And so that is a terrible situation to be in that we all want to avoid, and again, requires kind of everyone's collective efforts. But in short, I think finding ways to make electrification accessible to the more underserved communities is going to be critical.
Violet?
Yeah, can I?
Sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to another layer of barrier to accessibility is is that most of the time we have programs that help families to electrify, but many of our families and our communities faces delay maintenance issues. People don't have the capital to put a solar roof on to put solar on their roof. Like the example I said, we probably need to, fix the roof first because many of the homes in our communities are old. Like these are old housing stocks. And many of our families who afforded homes back in the day live in homes but don't have enough funding to make those maintenance. So we have a Resilient Home program where we go into people's home trying to help them transition to electrification, but then we have to deal with broken windows. We We have to deal with removing a carpet first because that's the priority to that family. And I have to say, many of the programs like we have right now with electrification, it still doesn't address that issue. PCE has an amazing program. We work with PCE, but the need is greater than what we offer. And also, many of our residents are renters, and we still don't have a program that help renters. It's only, you have to be a homeowner to own a home, but the majority of our community are renters, so they are immediately excluded from these programs. So I can give a whole long list of barriers if you have.
Jack, I wonder if you can comment on the role of the philanthropic sector in helping to address some of the challenges that Violet just raised.
Well, I think a lot of what I hear from folks like Violet and other organizations that we support in the community is that it really, the way that philanthropy can help and the way that we've tried to help, even with our limited funding, is to provide support for organizations like Climate Resilient Communities, Nuestra Casa, to build trust with the communities that they serve. So that they can, do the hard work of understanding what those communities are facing in terms of barriers to electrification. There's also a huge issue that we've heard time and time again about just the fraud and sort of abuse that's been happening, in the solar panel industry locally, and what's that done to damage the trust that folks have, in electrification, right? And so I think from our perspective, there's a lot of opportunities also that I think engage multiple sectors, right? Particularly the public sector, to invest in promotoras, community ambassadors, people that can work from a perspective of an organization and build trust with the communities that they serve. Even in the census in 2020, we invested a lot. We housed a Bay Area Census Fund that I think raised about $30 million and distributed it to community organizations to just get the word out, be present in community, and build trust. The same thing can happen with climate, with electrification, with understanding the issues and the barriers that people are facing and addressing them through long-term investment in building trust.
Chris, maybe what I'll
go ahead,
add
please,
to what Jack just said, I think we need to shift a little bit of how we approach these problems. Every program or every initiative that we come up with takes this lens of, let me flip it around. If it took the lens of how do we build a program, how do we build a funding mechanism that meets the needs of the most vulnerable, I guarantee it will work for everyone else as well. Right now, our programs are built not keeping them in mind, and then we tag it on top of it saying, oh, I forgot the equity piece, or I needed to include the equity piece. So we're trying to tweak those programs. We're trying to add that equity lens versus I think the framing needs to be, no, that's the audience I want to serve with this program, and I'm 100% sure it'll work for others. And the example of that you can see is, when we make our sidewalks. If you've seen, we're now trying to make sure like they're ADA compliant, how people cross it. It works for everyone. And someone who's able-bodied, of course, can use that space. Similarly, there's this 980 initiative where when you're crossing the street, it should work for a 9-year-old and it should work for an 80-year-old. And guess what? Those of us in between, it's obviously going to work for us as well. So I think that framing is what's holding us back in some of this work that we really need to think about. And the second point I think Jack made about cross-sector, we can do a better job of leveraging other programs. Housing Department has a lot of funding that they get from HCD, Housing and Community Development block grants. So I think we really need to figure out how does climate and housing, like sustainability and housing, or sustainability, climate, and this social safety net services, how do they come together so we are layering the funding to get kind of to the points that Violet was making on the struggles and the challenges that homeowners or renters are facing as well.
Jennifer, did you want to weigh in on this one as well?
I just wanted to really lift up what you just, I couldn't agree more about designing for the vulnerable. And one aspect of Prop 4 to keep in mind in the development of your projects is that across the entire bond, the language requires that there should be a priority for projects and plans that deliver meaningful and direct benefits to disadvantaged, severely disadvantaged communities and vulnerable populations. The devil will definitely be in the details of what meaningful and direct benefits is, and there is an active discussion in Sacramento in the Resources Agency. I'm pleased to tell you that there are a lot of environmental justice organizations like directly engaged with the Resources Agency to try to help determine that. But to your point, I think that is a space that we need to hold the state accountable through these grant making processes, that that priority is delivered on, and that what meaningful and direct benefits is authentic, and it's defined by the communities seeing it as meaningful and direct as a benefit, not someone else's decision that it is. It's really whether the community defines what that is.
I want to transition to questions from you in just a minute, so please make sure your question is in the app. But I also wanted to cycle back to comments that Assemblymember Pappen made when we started, and maybe I'll ask you how you're thinking about the flood risk that she identified as so central to San Mateo County.
I can start.
Please.
Yes. So, the work that CRC does, we work directly with frontline communities that are directly exposed to sea level rise. And now there's also new issues that are also coming up, new threats, including groundwater rising. There's also existence of contaminated sites, which there's hundreds of them in the communities that we serve. And so, it's one of the top priority issue for us. But, we know it's coming. It's already impacting our communities. East Palo Alto, for example, directly, every year, with sea level rise, they will be directly impacted. But one of the ongoing struggles too, another barrier that we see, is that many of our families are struggling with flood insurance. This is an issue I think we should think about in our region. Many of our families cannot afford flood insurance. And this problem will happen every year. And I'm very grateful that we also have other, agencies that are looking into this, like One Shoreline. Had a recent conversation with Lynn Matterman, trying to figure out how to address this. So I think that's one big issue. I think that, as a region, also as a state, I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and Kevin Newsom was there, and he was talking about insurance, and that all the insurance companies are leaving California because of the high cost. But the issue is the affordability and accessibility for many of our communities in the underserved region. So I want to put it out there. I think this is something that, as a region or as a county, something that a smaller nonprofit cannot do much, but for a county or even our foundations who have more reach and more resources, I hope that this will be something that we can have more discussions moving forward to address sea level rise.
Jesney, do you want to comment on the flood risk and the top priorities?
We were one of the first counties, I think, in the state as well, along with Marin, to do a sea level rise vulnerability assessment, which started in about 2015 or 16, and we wrapped it up in 2019. So I think as a county, we have, and here I'm not referring to county as an organization, but just as a whole county, we have been very aware, I think, of this risk, and action has been taken at several levels now. Is it sufficient? We've not even, I think, touched the tip of the iceberg here. So a couple of ways in which I think we can think about this is, one is policy and planning, right? So we did this study. One outcome of that was we realized there is no countywide flood district or like a water district in San Mateo County. That prompted the formation of One Shoreline. So it was an immediate kind of outcome to some of what Matt was saying. It was a systems level change that we made on. We needed an entity that was bringing together multiple jurisdictions, because again, what we found when we were doing the study was one city was planning for 2 feet of sea level rise, the other right next to it might have been doing 3 feet of sea level rise. And I think getting people to understand that you don't just have to live on the bay side or the coast side for flooding to impact you. I think that's a message we still need to keep putting forward. Getting people to understand this concept of cascading impacts. How do you get to work? Oh, I use 101. Guess what? 101 will be underwater. How are you going to get to work, right? What happens when you flush your toilets? The water goes downhill, right? Gravity. But where's your wastewater station? It's on the bay side. One day you're going to wake up and you won't be able to flush your toilet, even though you're living up on the hill. Like, we had to bring it down to that level to make people understand that we all have a stake in this. I might not live in that geography that's going to get flooded, but it's going to impact me as well. So I think the policy and planning piece is something I think as a county we can influence, but also support the cities with doing it so that we're all approaching it in the same way. Then there's projects. One Shoreline has been successful in getting funding for several projects. What we as government entities can also do is make sure that we're embedding that way of thinking or making our infrastructure resilient into our own operations. So the county adopted a sea level rise policy. So every time we are doing any infrastructure upgrade or we're making a new building, there's a process that some of our county departments have to go through. They have to go through a sea level rise checklist to understand what is the risk where we are building, what are we going to do about it. So there's a whole thing they have to fill out and they have to submit it to us as well. So I think, again, we're happy to help. And some of the cities like Burlingame is already leading on a lot of this. They did some of the former work. And the last piece, I think, to Violet's point is how do you build community leadership? Because there are some projects, Violet, that can happen in a neighborhood, and some of the projects around rain gardens and some of the more. I think you need to give people or empower people to take action in their own communities as well. And I think that's where nonprofits like yours come in. So things happen at multiple scales, and each scale is just as important.
Thank you. There are a whole bunch of great questions from the audience, and I'll get through as many as I can, but I have an ironic illustration of the challenges we face in this kind of issue, which is that the translators are saying, slow down, and I have a long list of questions to speed up. So to the extent possible, please keep your answers short. Here's a question from the live stream. Let me ask this one of Violet. What are the best practices for elevating community-based leadership when scaling efforts to address resilience?
I think, this is one example, like in this space right now. The hope when CRC had earlier conversations with Thrive to start building up a climate summit for San Mateo County, my vision was always been make it a space for our community leaders to be at the table and be able to elevate their voices in spaces like this. That's what CRC does, with the work that we do. In the community, we have climate change community teams. This is infrastructure that CRC, or a framework that CRC has built in the communities, where communities are at the table. Community leaders are at the table engaging with cities, engaging with county, and I'm very grateful that Jasneet is back in San Mateo County. I'm so happy you're back, Jasneet. I have to say that. But when Jasneet was here last time, she gave me funding to build the first climate change team in East Palo Alto. And now we have 5 climate change teams in East Palo Alto, in North Fair Oaks, in San Bruno, working with Rise South City to build the South San Francisco one. We also have teams in Santa Clara. But these are the spaces. You have to provide the community the resources and enabling them to be at the table. And it's gonna take resources to do it, but it's worth the investment, because I have some of the community from East Palo Alto, Pastor Burgess, also one of the community leader from East San Jose. They are here today because of that work that we have built. And it's going to take time, but you have to do the work. You have to invest as well. So I'm also speaking to all my funders and people who are here haven't supported CRC. Investment in climate change community teams, it's an infrastructure that will surely build up the capacity of community leaders to be in spaces like this, but also leading the work in their own communities.
Thank you. Let me ask you the next question of Jennifer. And this one focuses on young children and families, something we haven't talked very much about today so far. But what should we be doing to prioritize the benefits that these actions have for young children and families in climate resiliency efforts?
Well, as a childless person, I'm a little uneasy about venturing into a topic I don't have like direct personal experience of. I will say, I think as advocates, enrolling children as advocates, I've never seen more potent lobbyists than children. No one says no to them. Teach them a firm handshake and how to pause and be silent after they ask for what they want. They could solve all of this. I'm reluctant to answer a question I don't feel knowledgeable
Chris,
about.
maybe I can
I
add.
would
Thank
love
you.
to hear additional
I agree with
input.
you. They're the champions we need, and I don't even know. I don't think we really need to tell them about the benefit, especially if you're speaking to a middle schooler or a high schooler. They know it. It is already on their mind that, because this is the future we are giving to them. So it's not only on their mind, but they're highly motivated to do something about it. So it's more a case of tapping their motivation, the energy and the enthusiasm they have, and giving them a platform to do something with it. Now, why did I know CRC has the Youth Collective as well? The county runs a Youth Climate Ambassador program for high school youth. And we have to tell you, we go through this year-long cohort with them where we take them through this climate change education, but what's most impactful is they have to do a community project after that. And so I think you're giving them this opportunity to do something tangible, but these are our future leaders. These are actually our future policymakers. So imagine in the future someone who gets elected to the city of San Mateo or somewhere else, and this is a person who's gone through this type of program, the amount of change and impact that they can have on how local government approaches the work as well. So I think that's really what I would elevate is we got to make more resources available to empower them.
Can I quickly add something
Please
also?
do.
I mean, from a funding perspective, right? I mean, a lot of donors think of themselves as environmental donors or climate donors or early childhood donors, right? One of the things that we at the Community Foundation have tried to do is to build bridges between those different areas, right? And so just last week, actually, we brought many of our donors who were interested in either or both environmental issues or childcare issues to all five in Bellhaven in Menlo Park, which is a childcare facility that mostly serves low-income youth. And they're partnering with Canopy to provide tree cover in the play spaces, right? Which is so vital. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I can tell you there's nothing more concerning as a parent dropping your 1-year-old off at their childcare facility when it's going to be 90 degrees out, right? And there's no AC in the space because we're fortunate to live in the Bay Area and we didn't think those upgrades were necessary. But I think building bridges between those areas is really vital for expanding the pot.
And I'll add my one suggestion too, is at the next climate summit, I'd love to see a few more young people. We're pretty much at the close here, and I wonder if I could get a one-sentence summary of the thing you would most like to see happen over the next year. I'll start with Jake.
Well, I think I'll go back to wildfires. And it actually has a connection to the flooding question as well. I mean, we think about if you think about wildfire risk mitigation and avoidance, you're also avoiding the burn scar that comes from that catastrophic wildfire, right? Which could lead to landslides and erosion and flash flooding and all kinds of things. So we're obviously very, very focused on wildfire risk mitigation. I think the one push for all of us that I would have the one ask is PG&E can't do it alone, private sector can't do it alone, public sector can't do it alone. We all have to come together We have to work on, not just grid hardening, but what's the right building code? What is the right defensible space? What are the right building materials? This all kind of hinges together, because we're only as strong as the weakest link in that chain, and we know that one spark is all it takes sometimes. So
Thank you.
That would be my ask.
Violet, your highest aspiration for the next year?
More partnerships to provide services for our local community. I think, with the way it is with our federal government, right now there's a lot of people waiting for Prop 4, which I'm glad that it's coming, but I know it's also not enough. So that's why I'm thinking strategically, like working in partnerships. We do have existing partnership, but we want more. More with, Stanford, with the county, with our foundations to provide the resources for our community. Because I know it's not just climate change that we're facing. There's a lot of issues that are impacted our communities. We're talking about housing, we're talking about health. A lot of these are priorities to our families. And that's why we need more resources. So partnerships, it's one way to get a lot of this done for our communities.
Excellent.
And I'm very glad, I want to say again that Jasneet is back, because I have to honestly say, when she left San Mateo County, there weren't that many partnerships with the county after she left. So I don't know why, but I'm glad you're back, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right.
You're not making this easy, you know that, right? Maybe I'll tag on to what
Okay.
Violet said in this vein of partnerships. For me, it's funding. More funding coming to San Mateo County, but it's not going to come just through grants. It's a very small part, as we all know. The private sector. We need to figure out how to get the private sector in this room. I have not cracked that nut. I've been trying to figure it out for the last 2 to 3 years. Maybe we do that with philanthropy, figuring out, but I think anyone here who has any connections to the private sector would like to make the introductions, please do so. Next year, we should see some private sector people in here as well. In the past, they've been making more and more funding available to initiatives globally. I think that tide is turning. I think they're turning inwards, and they are looking a little bit more at their communities where they are. So I feel like this is the time where we really need to elevate that discussion with them and see how they can give us more funding for this work here.
Excellent. Jack,
Very
since
quickly-
Jasmine called you out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want
I
to.
do that to Jack all the time.
Yeah, and we both talk quickly, so it's, yeah. But no, I just want to build on this conversation. I want to have more spaces where we're talking about climate issues, where we have folks like Jake and PG&E and the private sector, in the space, like Jasneet said. And I think together we can grow the pot, we can understand the challenges in front of us, and find a solution that engages all of our communities collectively.
And Jennifer.
My aspiration is that Sacramento will focus less on seeing deregulation and reduction in access to the political and public process as a win, and more focus that what abundance means is more access and protection to the most vulnerable Californians.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jasneet, Jack, Jake, Jennifer, and Violet. Thank you, all of you, for a wonderful set of questions. And I'm not actually sure what comes next, but we're done.
Great. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Chris for moderating. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break right now. So everyone, please stretch your legs, get some more coffee, but be back here by 11:10 sharp. Thank you.